Yo, what's going on, everybody? This a throwback to the days of pre-vacation, two live streams and two consecutive nights. That's throwback. But we getting back to the content over here. Your boy just got a lot going on that I gotta catch everybody up on, and I'll talk about that in another video. But today's video is going to be an interesting video because we're talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is fraud, scammers. We got to talk about it, and I'm gonna keep it honest. Like, hey, I would consider myself an expert in the area of financial crimes and fraud and waste and abuse. I would probably toot my own horn and consider myself an expert in the fraud arena. If you're new to the channel, my name is Marcus. You're at the channel The Debt Free Dad, where we're talking finances, current events, attorney reactions, and just interesting stories that are out there that has a nexus to do with the dollar bill. Now, always got to get a disclaimer: licensed attorney, not your attorney, not legal, not financial advice. Now, in this video, we're talking about recycling fraud. Now, I've been in this game for a long time. You see the big gray patch up there. DFD been around this uh, legal arena for a substantial amount of time. And when I saw this article, my first thoughts were, what the hell is recycling fraud? Like, I was like, what? $7.6 million from recycling fraud? Well, what is recycling fraud? We're going to talk about it. I'm going to pull up the court documents. We're going to talk about how this recycling fraud works and how family 8 was able to finesse $7.6 million from recycling and committing recycling fraud. And the other question we're going to ask, like, is this really a crime? When you hear it, when I heard it initially, I was like, recycling fraud? What? Like, I don't know about that one. That sounds kind of silly. But when I actually dove into it, looked at the statute, looked at the complaint, found out about what was going on, I was like, yeah, they committing fraud and they stealing from the regular public, and somebody probably should toss their asses in jail. So let's go ahead and dive in. But before we talk about the case, I can't talk about anything without getting up to speed on what the hell is going on. So, if I'm going to talk about recycling fraud, I got to talk about and learn a little bit on the ins and outs of recycling. Now, I'm not going to say that recycling is a scam, but I will say there is a lot of gamesmanship going on in the recycling arena. Like, literally, how can I put this? I guess the best way to say it is, of all of the plastics that are out there, only about 10% are actually recyclable. But it's really some gamesmanship that's going on from the essentially big oil companies, are the companies that turn into these recycling companies. But there's a lot of gamesmanship because they made a symbol that really looks analogous and it looks just like the recycling symbol. And I thought that that was hilarious. And I wanted to show y'all this real quick. Okay. All right. So they have a recycling symbol and they also have uh, a symbol which is called the resin identification code. Now let's pull up the symbols to see how slick this was. And this was all outstanding marketing. Let me see if I can pull up the recycling symbol. All right. So we're going to pull it up. All right. So we got it up. So I want y'all to get a little bit of background on the $7.6 million. I don't know. My initial reaction was like, I don't know if this is a crime. They was just trying to save the environment. So I definitely agree with you, sis. What's going on? I hope everything is well. That's funny. That's funny. I have a large bag of aluminum cans I need to recycle for coins now. Hey, you gotta get it how you live, man. $7.6 million. This is actually quite common too, shockingly. But let me pull this up. All right, that green symbol all the way that you can see on the right hand side of the screen is the actual universal symbol for recycling. All right, now we're gonna take a look. Let me take a look at another symbol. All right, now those symbols that you see on the right hand side aren't recycling symbols. Those are resin identification symbols, and each number represents a different type of plastic and whether or not it can be recycled. Now, they don't mean the same thing, But this was really outstanding gamesmanship on the companies who create plastic containers. They purposely petitioned to have the resin identification number symbol, which is this number, these symbols right here on the right, look exactly like the recycling symbol, and have Congress authorized to put it on every bottle, so everyone thinks that every bottle is recyclable. But every bottle isn't recyclable. So if you actually look and you see these symbols on your bottles 1 through 7, only 1 and 2 are bottles that can actually be recycled. The rest is probably going to get burned or end up in the ocean, or with on a turtle's foot or something to that effect. But it was a lot of gamesmanship going on in the recycling arena. I'm not gonna say recycling is a scam, because 10% of a bunch of plastic is still a large amount. But yo, it's a little finessing and gamesmanship that is going on. Now, right here on the screen, I got the complaint that was the that was filed for the arrest warrant. Now we have 8 individuals, and it's too many people for me to name. So Maria Gonzalez, since you're number one, you're gonna speak for the entire group, because I'm not going through reading all of that stuff. But this is the criminal complaint that was filed. It was 8 individuals. They all had bonds that were set, I want to say, between $30,000 and $10,000. But before we look into the complaint, let's talk a little bit about this article I found, because we want to know, how the hell did these people get $7.6 million in a year from recycling? That's a crap load of bottles and cans. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say if it was 178 tons was the actual number that was given in order for them to make $7.6 million by committing recycling fraud. So now let's go ahead and take a look so we can see, how does recycling fraud actually come into fruition. So this is an interesting article right here. And of course, where does recycling fraud occur? In California, one of the most liberal states in the world. What is recycling fraud? How scammers cheat California's program and collect millions of dollars for bottles and cans. All right, let's go down to the first one: theft by recycling. It's a really big deal in California. They actually had consumer watchdog groups do audit to find out who are the perpetrators and some of the potential risk in this area for recycling. It all boils down to what they call a CRV. And what is a CRV? A CRV program is a program that is really actually stupid, in my opinion. Y'all let me know, but it's called the California Redemption Value. Essentially, what the California Redemption Value program is, I know I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better. Sometimes I be just letting them rip on this channel, and I need to do better. So yeah, I've been working on it a little bit in my absence, but I'm back, and I'm gonna get back to making content and supporting my folks. But man, your boy went on vacation, and it was just so much going on, and a lot of stuff going on with work and all sorts of stuff. So it's just been a minute, but I'm definitely trying to get rid of the sailor's language on this channel for the most part. If you Once it hits about 10 o'clock, it's free game. Whatever you get after 10 p.m. But up until 10 p.m., your boy gonna try to keep it clean. So the California redemption value, long story short, for every bottle or can of plastic container that's sold in California, people who make those purchases every time you go buy soda or some beverage or something in California, you're paying anywhere between an extra 5 to 10%. That's the CRV. Well, DFD, why in the hell are people in California paying an extra 5 to 10%? Because they want to encourage people to recycle. So if I buy a 6 pack, the extra 10 cent for each can is 60 cent total for the 6 pack. If I bring those containers back, I get my 60 cent back. And so it's a method to encourage people to recycle. Now, here's where the gamesmanship come into play. And we don't even really need to dive into the complaint. But a lot of people recycle by bulk. They care tons and tons of recyclable goods, or things that they say are recycled, which are recyclable, which actually aren't, to these private recycle institutions for them to recycle. They got to do a log and track all the numbers and put a serial number on there. At the end of the day, that serial number, that log of recyclables gets submitted to the state of California, and the state of California cuts them a check. But, well, what happened and where does the fraud come in? How does people game the system or finesse the system? Theft by recycler. California is potentially losing tens of millions of dollars a year recycling fraud, and it is not news to anyone who's looked into it. A report by a consumer watchdog trucker described a recycling program that is ripe for fraud, including the industry's biggest players, including waste haulers who collect deposits for recycled goods in curbside bins and recycling centers for themselves. The issue in a nutshell is that while there are several known ways to scam the system, it is relatively difficult to get caught. People can turn a lot of bottles without having to verify their identity, usually just by writing their name on a sheet of paper. Recycling centers often overstate how much they are collecting, their claims, often handwritten, not regularly checked by state auditors and processors who sell recycled goods to companies who seek raw materials. They can pad their margins by falsely representing those materials for eligible CRV, California credits that they get, the extra 5 or 10 cents that these people are paying. Now, here's where the crime occurred, and here where these guys, I'll be honest, I never heard of this in my life. I was like, it's not recycling. They should. My first thought was, if that's me, I'm taking it to trial. I didn't commit a crime. I'm just trying to save the planet, which is a valid argument. If you could probably get 2 or 3 real tree hugger people who love the environment, hey, shout out to stopping pollution. But if you can find a few tree huggers on your jury, you may be able to get some empathetic people. But this is how they gamed the system for $7.6 million in a year. Although the CRV provides a clear financial incentive to recycle and a way to make money from those struggling to find steady employment, the system contains a clear flaw. There is no obvious way to tell whether a bottle or a can was originally purchased in California. That means that someone could collect the deposit without ever having paid the additional 5 or 10 cent fee themselves, just by bringing containers in from other states that don't charge a recycling fee. And people do this in mass. The family accused of ripping off the state's recycling program to the tune of more than $7 million is accused of doing so by obtaining thousands of pounds of containers from Arizona, some purchased as bulk scrap, and bringing them to California. Prosecutors say that this constitutes grand theft and fraud. The scale of the suspected fraud may have been a red flag, prompting an investigation. In other cases, people have been caught by sheer chance. In one case, police followed a truck they suspected of carrying containers from Arizona all the way to San Diego, where they dutifully pulled into a recycling center, the Los Angeles Times reported. According to this consumer watchdog, people who import out-of-state containers may do so as part of a large racket in collaboration with corrupt recycling centers that process the hauls under the cover of night. Alternatively, perpetrators sell the containers on the street of California, promising buyers they can turn a profit by redeeming them for the CRV credit, which was never paid because they hauled in all of this scrap from overseas. Now, hey, sometimes, I got to give, I never heard of this. So sometimes I have to give credit where credit is due. This is a really target rich environment to commit fraud in, because everything appears to be based on the honor system. Like anytime you got a federal program with government dollars or state program with state dollars involved, and it's based on the honor system, you just bring it in, tell us how much you brought in, how much it weighed. There are going to be people who are going to try to find a way to manipulate the system. So initially, like I said, I never heard of recycling fraud as a crime. I looked it up. It is, in fact, a crime. They do have crime rings. It's actually done often. I think the largest amount I saw of recycling fraud funds that were received in a year was $10 million. It's always in California. Now, let's talk about one, should this be a crime? Uh, I'm gonna say yes, this should be a crime, but I blame this completely on the California state government. Hopefully I'll never, need them to sign off anything for me. But I blame this completely on the government of California. All right, hey, if you want to be liberal and encourage people to recycle, that's smart. But the easiest way to eliminate this ridiculous, stupid ass problem would be stop paying for the redemption credit. Like just don't have people pay for redemption credit up front. If Because I mean people are paying 10 cents. The only way the program makes money is if I buy 100 cans of soda and I pay 10 cents extra for each can for the redemption credit. The only way for me to get my money back is for me to recycle. People who are going to recycle. Yeah, there are some people who recycle to get the redemption credit, but there's no way in hell to police this system. I mean, you can just drive across the street to wherever, Arizona. You can go to south of the border and drive back with because 1 point something tons of recyclables. These people are renting big ass U-Haul trucks and dump trucks and filling them with just trash and plastics, and a lot of the stuff isn't even recyclable. So I thought that that was a very interesting take on a fraud scheme that I have never saw in my life. I never heard of. Um, I think they should be prosecuted. Just one, I'm not a proponent of thieves, but two, committing this type of fraud is really stealing from the people in California who pay the taxes because that extra 10 cent that you're paying, when they get that 10 cent back for a can that doesn't qualify, they just finessing the government out of the money. But, hey, this is all California's fault. If you want to come up with a really earthy, tree hugger liberal policy, I'm all for it, but you have to put some mechanisms in place so it's just not dumb and it just can't be defrauded real easy. Now these guys are looking at a lot of time in jail. Like I don't think it's going to be too well. It depends the definition of too much time. They probably get somewhere between 5 to 7 years. That's a lot of damn time. But in the full scheme of a potential, someone could have life in prison. On the full scheme of things, is not a lot of time. But $7.6 million is what they took. If this was a one-off, before I knew how pervasive this was, because I thought like, oh man, these people just did something that was probably a little illegal, probably illegal, but more creative. An easier way to do it would be, or potentially resolve it, is just hit them over the head with a civil fine and penalty. I mean, I think that's probably the easiest way to do it because you can get all of the losses back. So that whole 7.6 million you can get back. You can multiply that times three, plus charge them fees for every instance of fraud that they actually committed. So, considering if these people still have any money or if they converted that money and bought property and cars, you can seize all those assets, get all of that stuff back. But I get what they're trying to do. They want to make impression. They want people to know that we are looking at this type of fraud. But it's something that's just going to keep happening because they don't have any edits in place to ultimately stop it. So I thought that was an interesting take, and on just the craziest fraud that I ever heard of in my life. So recycling fraud, there it is. That's what it is. I wanted to talk real quick about another topic before I jump off here, and it really revolves around what's going on in the economy and what's going on with interest rates. I wanted to give my take on why they want to make an example out of it. Yeah, that's it. They want to make an example out of them. And, like really the people they should, I'm not saying go after these guys, but in order to perpetrate this type of fraud, they can't do it on their own. Even like the article said, in order to perpetrate a fraud, you have to have someone who can fudge the paperwork. So what they really should be doing is punishing the hell out of these private recycle centers that are fudging the numbers, that are facilitating this stuff. Because the people who made $7.6 million, they probably gave a kickback of $1 or $2 million to the people at the recycling center just to allow them to flip the books, to cook the books, to come up with the bogus serial numbers. So if they really want to stop it, I probably wouldn't focus my resources on the people who are doing it. I will focus my resources on the private recycling centers who are facilitating it. Because if you stop it right there, I don't care if someone comes in with a gazillion cans from Maine. They could come in with all the damn out of state cans that they want. If they don't have anybody to process the bogus paperwork, turn in the bogus number, give the bogus receipts, they won't be able to get away with the fraud. That's probably the easiest way to do it, but I understand why they want to kick these guys in the ass. Is it 10 o'clock yet? Almost. I understand why they want to arrest these guys to make an example because, hey, California, when you come out with a very loose, liberal, earthy policy that doesn't have any mechanisms or processes in place to stop fraud, you know what you get? A bunch of people committing fraud. And, hey, I'm going to be honest. Somewhere out there was some high speed investigator and law enforcement officer and attorney who got to prosecute this. So, hey, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at, I'll always have some type of work to do because there'll always be thieves out there. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with interest rates because a few days ago, the Fed raised interest rates. Everybody was kind of in a tizzy. The stock market actually ended relatively decent so far. But I just wanted to give a little bit of a rant. No, it's not 10 o'clock. I had to look. That's the cutoff time for profanity or the cut on time for profanity. 10 o'clock is the cut on time for profanity. I should have just do these shows at 10 o'clock. That way people know if you come in here, you're going to get a few curse words going there. But this is my take on why I really don't care that much about inflation. I mean, inflation is terrible. Yes, it eats away at your money if you got it sitting in the bank, if it's not making no interest for you, all of those things. But the people who are getting their ass kicked, butt kicked by inflation the most are the people who have consumer debt, car loans, those type of things. For the folks who aren't carrying credit card debts, for the folks who got very low fixed rate mortgages, it's not really beating everyone over the head to that extent. Where we'll see it the most, like for me, I'm gonna be honest, everybody like, oh, inflation rates just rose up. I don't care. There's only two places that I see inflation because I don't have any car payments, I don't have any credit card payments, and my mortgage, thank goodness, is a nice 2.25 or something like that percent. So I never move until I pay this thing off. But the I guess the only ways I really see inflation is at the gas pump and groceries. So I see it, gas, groceries, services, I see it like that. But if of all the places where inflation hits the most, if you can avoid those consumer debts that are variable, like the credit cards and the cars, if you can avoid all of that stuff, you can deal with inflation creeping up for these high periods for a year, two, or whatever it is, and really not you lose your underwear out here in your budget or in your financial game. Yeah, I had to increase my budget for groceries a little bit and move some things around for fuel. But all in all, as these interest rates are creeping up, I really don't see a really major impact because I'm just not carrying so much liability and so much risk. So I think that that's a they were. I think that's the best thing to do. So really, don't trip on that, man. Wolverine, you missed it. You missed it, man. I gave some gems on how to commit recycling fraud and get your M's up. So if you want to recycle some cans and drive them over to California, feel free to take advantage of the program because it's California. They liberal and loose out there, so the scamming opportunities is ripe. The scamming opportunities is ripe out there. But yeah, it's just been a lot going on. I haven't even really been making content like that because I just been just so tied up doing a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's kind of what it is. That's what's going on with the recycling fraud thing. Don't worry about inflation. And if inflation kicking your ass, it's probably because you got a lot of credit card debt or you got some variable interest rate or something to that effect. And you just got to get rid of that stuff. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. If you can avoid all of that nonsense, inflation will suck, but it's not going to be terrible. Like I kind of was excited that the Feds raised interest rate because literally the day after I got a notice from my bank saying we're increasing the interest rates on our savings account, and I was like, okay, that's good news. Like my shirt say, interest collect it, don't pay it. That's the name of the game, and that's how to make yourself comfortable. They recycling like hell. But do they? All right. So you in Michigan, where they finesse the game at though in California? And I don't know. I didn't even look to see. It's probably prevalent in some other real liberal state who got a dumbass rule like this. But in California, a little dedication our dollar. It can be no bull. I bought 2 bags of M&Ms today because they was on sale for 99 cents. That jump took me to a throwback days because now you checking out, you be like 250 for a bag of M&Ms. What the hell? Is ridiculous. But recycling is big up there, but in California, like I said, they're a little bit liberal and loose. And I'm just be honest, California is a state that doesn't have some of the most common sense policies, but that's neither here nor there. I know y'all probably think I'm the president of the Young Republicans of America, but I'm not. I just think that a little bit of their policies are a little bit wild. Every time you buy a brew, you buy a cold one in California, you pay an extra 5 or 10 cent. So when you turn that can in and recycle it, they give you that 5 or 10 cent back. And the fraud is occurring because these cats is going out of town with U-Hauls and trailers and dump trucks, filling them up with trash, cans, whatever they can find from out of state, and transferring all of that stuff in California, and they getting that redemption credit of 5 or 10 cent back. But they aren't entitled to it because the can is from out of state. So they never paid the redemption credit in the first place on the purchase of it. That's the reason why California people in California were just really getting finessed in the game, and there's a couple of places that got crazy legislation on both sides. California typically has some crazy legislation that don't make sense, and Florida, oh man, Florida's a beautiful place too, but they typically have legislation and laws that generally I look at it, I'm kind of like, it doesn't make sense. Speaking of Florida, one of my homegirls has investment properties in Florida, and there's no way you would ever pay me to buy investment property in Florida. Now, if you want to retire in Florida and buy a house or a condo, that's smart. But an investment property in Florida is the utter worst thing, in my personal opinion, that a person could do. Have y'all seen what's going on with Florida and their property and their insurance? It's a absolute catastrophe, and people can't insure their homes, and they live in these high flood areas or areas that may get hit up by some damn hurricane that sweep across the coast. And so what a lot of homeowners are facing, or people who have investment properties, their insurance costs have went up some 60, 70, 100% in the past year. And a lot of the big insurance companies just said, you know what? We're not even doing business in Florida no more. After y'all insurance term expires at the end of the year, the end of the 18 months, we not even renewing them. Y'all got to find insurance somewhere else. Now the state is trying to scramble to find a way where they can come up with an insurance program to help cover people in their homes. And some of the backup, they have a backup program, but because of the amount of hurricanes and floods that's been coming through, they don't have any money in their coffers. They ain't got no money stashed away. So when people homes get damaged and they do have this state back plan, they may be, you can have a $600,000 home, but if a hurricane come and wipe out your house, you might get $300,000 back to build your home. And that's a utter damn shame. I think that's crazy as hell. And I solely blame that on that's a government problem. I feel like the government's responsibility is to take care of their folks. Unfortunately, if you in an area where it's hurricanes, tornadoes, whirlwinds, earthquakes, all of that stuff, you got to develop a damn plan so people can have insurance. I mean, me personally, if my stuff get wiped out by a hurricane, let there be a hurricane in DC consistently. I'm taking up my stuff. It's 10 o'clock and my ass is moving. I'm packing up my stuff and I'm moving. But a lot of these people love where they live and they get wiped out and they rebuild and they get wiped out and they rebuild. And now they're going to have places that are uninsured because, or only insured at 50%. And that's a huge risk. I mean, I don't know. I can't do it. I think it's a travesty that that's happening. But I think that that's something that we probably could have foresee coming because the trends were going up. And I think the same thing is happening, is actually something worse happening in Nevada. And so people can't get house insurance on their homes and their condos in Florida because of earthquakes and hurricanes. And in Nevada, people can't get water. Isn't that funny? But people in Nevada are fighting over water rights because of severe droughts. So there are entire neighborhoods in Nevada where people are taking showers, saving that water to wash their damn clothes. And it's actually sad. And so I looked at it, I was like, well, how the hell did something like this happen? Apparently, when people built these communities, these contractors built these communities in Nevada, they only had to promise that there was enough underground water reserves or access to water to last 100 years. Well, what's happening? People are fake recycling. People got a bunch of gas guzzlers. It's getting hotter out. Droughts are coming aboard. All those water reserves are drying up. So people in California, Nevada, Northern California, Denver as well, they don't have the water that they had to supply the neighborhoods. And so now that those 100-year agreements are coming to an end, so people out there with no water, and it's actually going to start water wars. Nevada gets a lot of their water from Colorado, and I was reading that the people in Colorado, the state of Colorado, was like, "Nah, we're not diverting any more of our water y'all way because we got to take care of our citizens," which is a real thing. I mean, I don't blame them. If I was the governor of Colorado and there's a drought and there's a water shortage, why the hell would I care about people in Arizona when I want to take care of my people first? I think that's the right call to make. I think it's their responsibility. But I mean, you got to put some thought into where you decide to move to, where you decide to relocate to. Because I remember about 5 to 7 years ago, it was a big deal for people to go. I remember everybody talking about moving to Nevada. Yo, it's cheap out there. If you go somewhere off the strip, they got nice communities. But I'm like, bro, that's the desert. I don't want to move in the desert. And now 5, 7 years later, people scrambling for water is gonna. I mean, like it's gonna be like straight water wars. And my first question was, because I'm not the smartest guy, I'm not a scientific guy. I was like, well, they can turn. I mean, it's California. Los Angeles, and they right there next to the ocean. Can't they just turn that salt water into clean water? And yeah, you can, but it's actually expensive as hell to do. That's why nobody does it. That's why, yeah, you could actually build a station to throw out there in the middle of the ocean that would turn the ocean water into pure water for people to use. But it's so expensive, it's actually cheaper to bottle imported water from somewhere else to supply a community. And so what I saw in Arizona, they got actual private companies that are transporting and shipping waters by the thousands of tons and trucks to these communities so people can have water. And the only thing that made me look into it, I was like, man, why is this happening? I have a plot of property in South Carolina that has a spring on it, right? And back in the day, not now, but maybe 40, 50 years ago, everybody who stays in the town local to this spring, all of their water came directly from this spring. Then, as things evolved, the city finally got their act together and people got connected to the city water. But I just have this land out there with this spring on it. And right now, I just rent it out so people can hunt, right? But literally, what was happening, the only reason I was like, I came across this information every 60 or 90 days, I get an offer in the mail from someone trying to purchase it. Like, yo, we want to buy that land. We want to buy that land. Now I got other land down there. They don't give a damn about that land. They were all concerned with this spring. Oh, I got this spring. I got this land with this spring. We'll give you X amount of dollars for it. 90 days later, we'll give you. I mean, the prices just keep going up and up. And so, I looked into it. It was odd because if it was a company or individual from South Carolina who was actually trying to buy this land, I probably wouldn't have researched to figure out what the hell they wanted it for and why does this price keep going up. But I was like, it's an out of state company. Why would an out of state company in Pennsylvania want this, I don't know, 7, 8 acres of land with this spring ordinance in South Carolina? It's it's a big enough plot of land to where if you wanted to throw a house or something on it, that's cool. But it's not big enough to use as farmland unless you're growing marijuana. And people in South Carolina are still stubborn, and you can't grow marijuana in South Carolina legally. Legally. So it's not big enough to grow corn or any other crop on. And so I couldn't figure it out. So when the company sent me the last letter, I actually did some open source research, and you can find all of this stuff out on the internet. So I looked up the company, and once I found the company, it was a new company that was created maybe about 2 years ago. But they were created and they had a parent organization. So of course, I looked at the parent organization, and the parent organization is way out on the West Coast. And I was like, why would this company on the West Coast create a company on the East Coast, on the Northeast, to buy this little ass plot of land with this freshwater spring on it down south for this much money? Well, what does the parent company do? Hey, they are a water transportation company. And so, how do they make their money? They find places that have freshwater springs where they have access to it. They ship water from there to those dry ass people out there in places like Arizona and New Mexico who are going through the water struggles right now, and they're making millions of dollars. So, essentially, what that told me is I'm not selling them shit. What that told me is I'm not selling them a damn thing, right? So but that shows how important water rights are going to be in the West Coast in the next 15 to 20 years at the rate things are going, because companies all over are trying to buy freshwater springs just so they can transport it to where they need the water at. But from a business standpoint, once I figured it out and I put two and two together and I came up with four, I told my pops, I was like, I'm not going to sell them anything. But if they want to sit down and talk about an agreement where I can give them uh, a term for the exclusive use and rights to that plot of land for an annual fee that's going to be paid every quarter, we can definitely talk about that. We can definitely talk about that. But that's how I found out about the whole water wars, just from some company being a little bit too interested in some country ass property I got that I didn't think you can do anything with. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. But I'm gonna sit on it, and in 10 to 15 years, when the water wars start, you're gonna see DFD looking like the king of Zumonda sitting in my chair with my armed guards next to me with their AK-47, 7 bottles of DFD water. Yo, that's it for this video. I appreciate everybody who tuned in. Tomorrow I'm gonna give I'm gonna drop a video. It's gonna be a pre-recorded video, but it's gonna be interesting because I gotta give y'all some updates. This Friday is the last day on this job. I worked at this job for 3 years, and tomorrow or Thursday I'm gonna drop a video because I like to have these transparent moments where I show y'all what I got going on. So I wanted to show y'all in 3 years what I contributed to my retirement account, how the return on that played out, and what I invested in within this account. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, the interest rate for this year is crazy. So if cats out there losing money in the stock market, they really don't know what they're doing. Because I'm at like, I don't know, 17.99 or 18.99% for the year. But I'm gonna show y'all a little bit of transparency, show y'all what I did for these 3 years during my time at this organization, just from an investment side and my retirement fund. And we're gonna talk about why is it so important for you to capitalize and get that employer match? If you aren't getting that match, it is terrible. So I'm gonna break that down for y'all, show y'all the numbers, and just keep y'all tuned in so y'all know what's going on. And I'm gonna tell y'all what I invested in the fund, but I'll tell you what the equivalent is if you're outside of that fund. Even if you don't have access to this particular fund that's in this retirement account that I invested in, you can invest in a similar fund that's in the market. And I just explain what that is. I'm not making no recommendations. Invest at your own peril. Don't listen to me, but I'm definitely going to show y'all what I'm doing. Y'all take care. I appreciate y'all tuning in. Be blessed. Peace.